I just finished day 4 of hiking in continuous rain and downpours, and I'm just getting camp set up for tonight before my final day tomorrow. I knew there was going to be a ton of rain going into this trip, so I planned a very specific gear to bring along in order to be as dry, warm, and comfortable as possible. Starting off with my rain gear, I'm wearing an Enlighten Equipment Visp rain jacket. There's a couple features that I really like about this jacket. First up, it's lightweight and durable, which is hard to find with jackets. The other thing is that it has armpit zips. No matter how breathable your rain gear is, having mechanical ventilation is always going to be the best. For my rain pants, I'm wearing Outdoor Research Helium rain pants. I wanted to get the Visp rain pants as well, but they're sold out. But as soon as they're back in stock, I'm gonna be picking them up. On my feet, I'm wearing Hoka Speedgoat trail running shoes. Even though the trail on this trip was super muddy, very wet, and I was getting my feet wet pretty much every 5 minutes, I went with trail runners for a couple of reasons. First up, I just feel a lot more nimble in trail runners relative to boots. I was climbing up ladders, scrambling through rocks, and just generally going through some pretty gnarly terrain that I wanted to be nimble for. The other thing is that my feet are gonna be wet anyways, whether I'm wearing trail runners or boots. And with trail runners, at least they'll dry if I get a little bit of sun, whereas boots are gonna stay wet for days. Before I get into the shelter system that I have set up behind me, let's go through everything that's in my pack, starting off with the pack that I brought for this trip. This is the Gregory Focal 58 pack. It's a great pack. It's not waterproof or anything like that, so it is getting soaked with rain, but I do have something inside there that's keeping all the items I want to stay dry. But why do I like this pack, especially for rainy conditions? First of all, it has a trampoline back. So when it's hot out, a trampoline back keeps your back nice and ventilated and prevents it from getting super sweaty. But when it's raining out, it also helps keep your back dry. If you have foam right against your back, that's just gonna hold moisture on your back and push that moisture through your rain jacket and get your back soaking wet. The other thing I like with this pack, it has very easily accessible water bottle pockets. So you just pull water out through the bottom here and then you can push it back through. I love a pack with accessible water bottle pockets, and these pockets have another trick up their sleeve. Because they have a little bit of a pocket in the bottom here, I can keep things like my rain mitts in there. So I'm using the Outdoor Research Helium rain mitts. They're not waterproof, but when my hands do start to get cold, I can throw these on. They're gonna keep me a little bit warmer. And I love that I can just take them out and stuff them back in here. You can really put anything in there if you want to. You can even put a very packable rain jacket into that pocket. In the front pouch, I'm keeping my filter. I also keep my rain gear in there when it's not raining, which was not very often on this trip. This is the LifeStraw Flex filter. I brought it on this trip because I'm testing it out, but I don't recommend it at this point. It's not impressing me at all. So if you are gonna pick up a filter, pick up the Platypus Quick Draw. It's my favorite filter, and I'll have links in the video description. You guys go check out all the gear that I'm bringing on this trip and talking about in this video. In my brain here, I have a bunch of different items. I have my poop kit in this Poopmoji waterproof bag, so I don't want my toilet paper getting wet, so I have it all in there. I have my ditty bag, I have my first aid kit, and then I have some sunscreen. I didn't need the sunscreen at all on this trip. And then I have my Garmin InReach. This is the InReach Mini 2. I think it's super important to have an InReach, especially on a trail like this, where there is a lot of mud, slippery routes, and then ladders and stuff. I saw 3 helicopters carrying people out on this trip so far, which is a lot. On the West Coast Trail, somebody gets rescued pretty much every other day. Now let's get into what I have inside my pack, everything in order to stay dry and warm on this trip. First up, we have my Helinox Chair Zero. This is actually more of a comfort item. I love having a chair in order to put it up underneath the tarp, relax and chill out. I have it in this Hilltop Packs waterproof pack so it doesn't get soaking wet. Then I have my food bags. This is also made by Hilltop Packs, and I just have all my food for the trip in here. I have my entire cook kit and cook system in here. So I have my Toaks titanium pot, just a nice little lightweight ultralight pot. I have my pink titanium spoon. And then I have my Soto Windmaster stove. This stove performs really well in the wind, which is essential because I'm right on the ocean here and there's a ton of wind coming off constantly, and it really disrupts your cooking if you don't have a stove that performs well in the wind. Something I did on this trip in order to be a little bit more environmentally friendly is I use reusable bags for all of my dinners and snacks. These are just Rusby bags. They're essentially very durable and dishwasher safe Ziploc bags. So I use these for a lot of different things. You can pour boiling water in them. Super useful and one of my favorite items for reducing my waste while out on trail. Next up, we have my extra socks and underwear. So I am using Stansfield's nylon underwear. I love them. They dry super quick when you do get some sun. And then I have Injinji toe socks. These are the Run Light versions. I like really thin, lightweight Injinji toe socks because they're made with a synthetic material, so they don't hold on to a ton of water. They dry very quickly. As well, I find I don't get a lot of blisters with the thinner version. And before we get into my dry goods, I have a little cloth here. So I use this to wipe down the inside of my tent and the outside of my tent if I get a little bit of moisture in there. Super useful to have if you're in any sort of wet conditions or you're dealing with condensation. And then we get into my contractor's bag. So I use either a contractor's bag or a Nilo Flume pack liner in order to keep all the goods I want it dry staying dry. So I just twist this up and then tuck it down the side of the pack in order to make it waterproof. And in here I have all of my dry goods. We'll get all that into the tent and then show you that. It includes my sleep system and all my clothing. For my tent, I'm using the Durston X-Mid 2P tent. It's an awesome tent in the rain. It just sheds rain and wind very well. I had this set up last night in a torrential downpour and some of the craziest wind I've ever experienced. And that was on sand and the tent held up very well. One of the tent pegs pulled up but the tent stayed dry and I was able to run around naked and get everything pegged back in. But what I really like about the X-Mid tent is that it's made with a sil poly material. Sil poly absorbs a lot less moisture than sil nylon, so the tent dries a lot quicker, as well as just generally drier if it does rain. And this tarp above me at Hammock Gear Tarp is also made with sil poly. On a rainy trip, having a tarp is awesome. You can just set it up, put your chair, cook system underneath here, hang out with your friends. It makes life a lot better when you're out on trail and it's raining. Couple more nice things with the X-Mid. First of all, it's double walled, and while a double wall tent doesn't prevent condensation, it provides a physical barrier for everything you have inside the tent from touching the outer walls and getting that gear wet. As well, this is the 2-person version, and when it's raining, it's nice to have a little bit more livable space inside your tent. So for me, even though I'm by myself on this trip, having a 2-person tent was really nice. For my sleep system, I was very deliberate with the items that I chose. Even though it's above freezing every single night, I still went with items that were very warm. And that's because when you're in very wet, humid, moist environments, the heat just gets sucked out of you. And as everything gets wet, it loses its ability to keep you warm. For my sleeping pad, I'm using the 2022 version of the Nemo Tensor. It has an R value of 4.2, which is a nice high R value for keeping you warm. I'm using the Trekology 2.0 pillow. That's my go-to pillow. It has a pad strapped in order to keep it locked onto your pad, which is amazing. You're not having to chase your pillow around your tent in the middle of the night. And then for my sleep insulation, I'm using the Katabatic Flex 22 quilt. And there's a few different things that are awesome about this quilt. First up, it is very lightweight and very warm. It has a comfort rating well below freezing, so it's able to keep me warm even if it does get a little bit damp. And if that down does get wet, it has a hydrophobic treatment, so it doesn't absorb as much water, and it's able to keep its loft in humid and moist environments. So far, over the last 3 or 4 nights in very wet and humid conditions, I've been plenty warm with this system. For my clothing that I brought with me, again, I was very deliberate with what I brought. First of all, we have the Torrid Apex jacket from Enlightened Equipment. So this is a synthetic jacket, which means it performs a lot better in wet and humid conditions than something like a down jacket. When down gets wet, it loses its loft and loses its warming ability very quickly. Synthetic insulation can hold on to its warming ability a little bit longer. And then for my top, I have a merino wool base layer here. So I love merino wool in order to sleep in. So I have this long sleeve base layer. And then I have Decathlon fleece pants. These are super lightweight, but super warm pants. Fleece is gonna dry very quickly, so it's nice to have these. And then I have a merino wool toque, and then I have merino wool socks. Go check out this video if you want to see a full review of the Torrid Apex jacket, as well as subscribe to the channel if you want to get notified when the trip video for this trip drops. It was a doozy.